Hello to those of you who are logging on for our informational webinar about your upcoming tour. We're going to allow for one more moment for folks to log on, but sit tight. Our presentation is going to begin shortly. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this informational webinar about your upcoming tour with EF Go Ahead Tours, the highlights of England, Scotland, and Ireland. My name is Nilsson. I work as a member of our community and engagement team. I'm based out of our Boston office, and I'm really excited to be here with you and to be your host for today's webinar. I'm also really excited to introduce you to our guest today. Kurt is one of our tour directors, done this tour for us many times. He's about to head out and lead this tour next week, actually. Kurt, can I ask you to introduce yourself to our travelers, please?
Hello, my name is Kurt. I'm originally from Oxford in England, and I've been a tour director with Go Ahead for many years now, and I'm excited to tell you all about your upcoming tour.
Thank you, Kurt. Very excited to have you here with us today. So with that, let's jump right in. And I'm going to tell you about our agenda for today's meeting. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open it up by talking to you about helpful information for you as you prepare for tours. So I'll talk to you about our Safe Traveler Agreement, our app, some tips about air travel, as well as safety on tour, including the EF COVID Care Promise. And then once we get through that information, that's when the fun stuff really begins. I'm going to ask Kurt to step in here and give us an overview of the itinerary and take us through that, including some of the optional excursions that you can add to enhance your experience. And then we're going to talk about some additional tips. We'll talk about things like weather, packing, money, and more. And at the end, we will have time for your questions and answers. So I do want to let you know that if you do have to leave early, or if you have folks that you're traveling with that weren't able to sign on today, we are recording this meeting and we will be sending you the recording tomorrow. Also, I do want to let you know that if you do have questions for us, you can submit those using the Q&A function on the toolbar in Zoom. So I do have a colleague that's going to be monitoring the inbox, and they may respond to you in writing, but we'll also try to take your questions during the presentation and, of course, during the Q&A period as well. So let's begin by talking about the Safe Traveler Agreement. The Safe Traveler Agreement is a document that we've created that outlines our approach to traveling as it relates to COVID-19. So it lays out what we expect from you as a traveler as far as vaccination, testing, and all the rest, and lets you know what we expect from you, what you can expect from us and your fellow travelers. So let's talk a little bit about some things that you should be doing to prepare for your upcoming departure. So the first thing, of course, is making sure you have a valid passport. That shouldn't be a surprise, but a lot of us haven't traveled in a while. So make sure that your passport is still valid and that it's valid for at least 6 months beyond your scheduled return date. Again, double check and make sure your passport is valid for at least 6 months beyond your scheduled return date. Now, as of now, some good news is that the UK and Ireland do not have COVID-related entry requirements. So that's good news, makes things very easy for us. But at this time, Go Ahead is still asking a few things of our travelers as part of the Safe Traveler Agreement. So as part of the Safe Traveler Agreement, we do ask that our travelers be vaccinated against COVID-19. And what we mean by that is that you have received your initial vaccination series. In addition to that, we're also asking that travelers take a COVID-19 test and get a negative result before joining us on tour. So I do want to talk a little bit about the procedures around testing. So the most important thing here is that we're just trying to catch any possible positive cases before you depart for tour. So the most important thing is if you do have a positive test result before you leave for tour, give us a call right away so that we can then talk to you about your options for rescheduling or a voucher towards a future trip. These things can happen, but if you do have a positive result, please give us a call and tell us right away. So, as far as testing, we ask that you have either a PCR test or an antigen test. Either one of these two types of test is fine. And when we say antigen test, that does include home tests. What we ask is that if you're getting your test done by a third-party provider, so like at a pharmacy or at a testing center, please do that within 72 hours of the departure of your first flight. And we ask that you bring the documentation that they give you of your test result with you to tour. So have that available. If you do a home test, we ask that you do that within 24 hours of the departure of your first flight. And we also ask that you take a photo of that result to have with you when you depart for tour. Again, these are things that Go Ahead is asking of our travelers. These are not entry requirements for the UK or Ireland. You can find the Safe Traveler Agreement as well as the entry requirements for the UK and Ireland on our website by searching in the search bar for travel requirements or entry requirements. At this time, again, the UK and Ireland don't have COVID-related entry requirements, but things can change. So you can always check up on the Go Ahead Tours website to find that information. We also encourage you to download our app. If you don't have it yet, you can open up the camera on your smartphone and point it at this QR code, and it will prompt you to download the app. The app is also available in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. There's a couple reasons I think it's helpful to have the app. One of them is as you're preparing for tour, you can find lots of helpful information to help you prepare. So, some of the things we're going to be covering today, like weather, packing, electricity, money, you can find information about all that in greater detail than we'll cover today in the Go Ahead Tours app in the tab that we call the Getting Ready tab. So the Getting Ready tab has all that pre-tour information. There's some other helpful tools that we have in there. We have a feature that we call the tour feed. So this is sort of like it's similar to like a Facebook wall. You can post messages to the whole group and share photos and memories there. Also, if your tour director's on the app, they may share announcements there. So that's one more way for you to get information from us. There's also a currency converter in there, so that's helpful when you're doing your shopping. So lots of good reasons to download the app. If you don't have it yet, I strongly encourage you to do so. All right, so let's talk a little bit about traveling now. And in particular, I want to talk to you about air travel. If you've been following the news this summer like I have, you've probably seen some stories about some challenges facing the airline industry. And I want to talk to you about what that's been looking like from our perspective, and then share some tips to help you have a smooth journey to tour as possible. So, this summer has been really exciting, to be honest with you. It's been the first big travel season that we've seen since 2019, and there's been huge demand for travel, which is really exciting. But there have been some issues with the airlines, and namely they're dealing with staffing challenges. So, you've probably read some articles about pilot shortages, but this extends to other parts of the airport as well. We're talking about flight crews, baggage handlers, TSA agents. And so what this is, adding on to is, of course, the routine disruptions that we have, things like weather issues or mechanical delays. And so what we've seen result is more frequent schedule changes, so cancellations and delays, as well as issues with lost or delayed luggage. Now, I want to be clear, these things aren't affecting a majority of our travelers by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just things that we've been seeing more often than we have in the past. So we want to talk to you about some things that you can do to help prepare you for your journey. So the first thing that I would recommend that you do is download the app for the airline on which you are flying. There's some really helpful reasons to have the app for your airline. The first is that as you're preparing to depart, there's things that you can do to manage your reservation directly with your airline. Oftentimes they'll allow you to select seats. You can also enter your known traveler numbers or dietary preferences. So it's a good idea to have it for that reason. Also, in the event that you do have a cancellation or delay, they usually notify you through those apps so you know right away. And some of them even have tools to help you manage those situations. So I think it's a good idea to have that app. I also recommend arriving at the airport extra early. So in the past, we used to recommend arriving 2 hours early for your international flights. I would give yourself even more time than that. You may be looking at this number on the screen, 3 to 4 hours, and think that's excessive. It's up to you when you arrive, but my personal preference would be that you get to the airport early, you breeze through security, and you end up sitting and waiting for a little longer than to be late. I would rather have you be early than late. One other thing that I do want to talk to you about is packing for this tour. So As I said, this summer we have seen more frequent cases of lost or delayed luggage. And so there are some steps that you can take to be prepared for that possibility. So one thing that you can do that would make it so it's virtually impossible for the luggage or the airline to lose your luggage is to travel with only a carry-on bag. For a tour of this length, it is possible to pack in only a carry-on bag and your personal items. So if you're up for that, I would say go for it. If you do decide to check a bag, please limit yourself to one checked bag per person, and please make sure to pack essentials in your carry-on bag. So things like medication, your toothbrush, and a few spare outfits. You should have those with you on the plane just in case your luggage is delayed and it takes some time for the airline to get it back to you. Unfortunately, the nature of traveling on a tour is that it does make it a little bit challenging for the airline to reconnect you with your luggage if it is delayed. So it's good to just be prepared for the possibility that it could take a few days. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what to do if your flight is delayed. So if you are on your itinerary and your flight is canceled, or you have a delay that causes you to miss a connection, it is the responsibility of the airline that you're traveling with to reprotect you and provide you with an alternative flight to get you to your final destination. The fastest way to get to tour or to get home is typically to work directly with the agents for the airline that you're flying with. Some of their apps will have tools that will help make it so you can do this on your own without talking to someone. So another good reason to have those apps. But you can also always contact our on-tour support team for advice. And of course, if you're going to be late, if you're not going to be arriving at the time that we expect you, please do let us know so that we can make sure to make adjustments and help you out with your arrival there. Now, if you do have to get a new itinerary to get you to tour, I think I should mention that the airlines are working with limited aircraft, they're working with limited staff, so the options may not be as appealing as your original itinerary. But it's still important to take what options you can get as soon as possible, because everyone else that was also canceled or delayed is going to be trying to secure one of those seats as well. It's also probable that your seating assignment will change as well, so that's something to bear in mind. Now, with all of this said, travel insurance is strongly recommended. We have a package that we call Trip Protection. And as part of Trip Protection, if you have a significant delay, it can help reimburse you for meals or hotels. And if your luggage is lost, it can reimburse you for buying new clothes. So as you're considering travel insurance, make sure that it has protections for things that can happen to you when you are in transit. The last thing that I want to say about this is, pack your patience and prepare to be adaptable. These situations are never fun. We don't want to have a delay or a cancellation, but as travelers, it's something that we occasionally do have to deal with. And so, be prepared to be adaptable, be flexible, and once you get to tour, we're going to do our best to show you an incredible time. So get through that experience, and then let us take care of the rest. All right, so let's talk about how to meet the group in London. When you arrive, first of all, welcome to London. You've made it, and your tour is about to begin. So once you leave the plane, you do need to go through the arrivals process. You're going to have to show your passport and to enter the country. I would say just be prepared. There can be lines here at the arrival, so that's a time to again exercise your patience. And once you collect your luggage, please know that we can't meet you in the baggage claim area. You do need to proceed from there into the public arrivals hall. Now, in London, we use drivers from a company called Addison Lee and to pick you up and then to drive you to the hotel. So if you've ever been on a go-ahead tour in the past, you might have met someone holding a green go-ahead sign, but on this trip, that will not be the case. What you should look for is a driver holding a sign with your name on it. So once you enter the arrivals hall, there usually be a number of folks lined up with signs with names. So look for a sign with your name on it. And this sign can take many forms. So it could be a paper sign, it could be a whiteboard, it could be a tablet, or even a phone. I've seen some people holding phones up with names on it. So keep an eye out for a driver holding a sign with your name on it. Now, from there, they will transfer you to the hotel. And typically on this tour, the hotel lobby is where your tour director will be waiting for you. One thing that I should mention is that arrival times in the UK are typically in the morning, but check-in time at the hotels is usually between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. So it's possible that when you arrive, your room may not be ready yet, but I would say, most of the hotels will let you leave your bag and you can go out and do some sightseeing and get some sights in on that first day when we don't have anything scheduled for you until the welcome meeting. One other thing I should mention is that your tour director, we're going to be sending you their phone number by email a few days before you arrive to tour. So if you have any issues on the arrival day, you will have the contact information for your tour director and you can reach out to them there. Now, this arrival process that I've just described to you, if you've purchased your flight package with us for the standard arrival day, this is included. We're already planning to meet you there. If you've purchased your own flights and you do want to have this transfer included, please give us a call because we need to know when you're going to arrive and talk to you about pricing for the transfer. All right, so I have a few more things to touch on before we get into the itinerary. I do want to talk to you about being on tour now and some expectations around safety. So one of the great things about traveling with us, of course, is that you have a tour director who's with you for the entire tour, and they'll be able to help give you advice or let you know about any kind of local regulations. But the good news is that as of right now, the tour directors that I've been speaking to in the UK and Ireland, they say that things are feeling pretty close to normal as far as travel goes. But one thing that I would say is that we continue to thank you for your flexibility. Some of our suppliers and places that we use, they're going through what I would call a transitional period as well, kind of getting back up on their feet post-COVID. And so, sometimes we have to make adjustments on tour. We thank you in advance for your flexibility there. One thing that I do want to talk to you about is the EF COVID Care Promise, which is a policy that we put in place to answer this question. What happens if I am required to quarantine on tour? So if you're on tour with us and you are required to quarantine, we will be there for you. We will arrange and pay for your hotel and all of your meals. We'll provide support to you if you need to communicate with local medical professionals or authorities. And if you've purchased your flight package with us, we will arrange a new itinerary to get you home once your quarantine has ended at no additional expense to you. So I hope that gives you some peace of mind, although I hope none of you have to use this policy. All right, so now we're getting to my favorite part of the presentation, talking about the itinerary itself. Kurt, can I ask you to sort of hop in here and take over for me and talk to us about what we can expect beginning with the arrival day in London?
So arrival day, like Nielsen said, you'll meet your tour director in the lobby of the hotel, and there he can fill you in with things you'd like to do on the day, like any suggestions and stuff you can do and get to experience that extra time you have in London. And then basically there will be a welcome drink and dinner in the evening. And so then he will confirm with you the time of that. And that's your only official appointment on that day. And then that's where you get to meet your other group members, and then you can ask your tour director questions about the itinerary, how it all flows, and that's basically that evening. But it's a nice evening to get to meet your fellow travelers as well. So the next, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I had a question that came in from Caridad, and they asked, what time does the welcome meeting usually start on arrival day?
It can depend. From 5 o'clock, I would say normally. It could be, but later. It depends. Between 5 and 7, that kind of time. And usually, because we know it's the first day, I mean, 8:30 it wraps up by, sometimes at 9. But I would say usually they try to wrap it up as quickly as possible, so it doesn't go on so you get to enjoy your dinner and you still have a nice evening as well. So I wouldn't say it goes super late, because we understand you've all been traveling on that first day. Right? Does that answer the question?
Yes, that does.
Lovely. And then so the next day you have your sightseeing tour of London, where you get to see the sights of London, the Thames River, St Paul's Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, and Buckingham Palace. And that's that. And then afterwards in the afternoon, there is an optional excursion of Windsor Castle or Hampton Court Palace. So depending on when you arrive, because I think Windsor is closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Is that right?
I believe so.
So, but basically, you'll be advised, you'll know before you arrive which one you'll be doing. They are both fantastic. They're both amazing optionals, and you get to learn lots more about the history of the kings and queens of England. And as well, Hampton Court Palace is very beautiful as well. So you're with your local Blue Badge guide all day, and that's a fantastic optional to do either of those two. In that evening, normally you have some free time, but usually as tour directors, we arrange like a little drink or dinner, or you need some suggestions to go and get local fish and chips or something like that. Then talk to your tour director and he can really help you out. And then the next day is, I think it's going to Edinburgh. Yeah, that's correct. So the next morning, basically, we get up and we travel to the famous King's Cross station, famous for many things, but as well, Mr. Harry Potter, platform 9 3/4 exists there. And then you board the train. What you would do, you take your bags into the station, and then basically with your tour director, you will go to the train. It's a high-speed train. It takes about 4.5 hours, and it goes very, very fast. Up to Scotland, but as well, when you board the train, you will take your bags and you will load them into the train, and there's compartments and spaces where you can do this, and your tour director's done this many times before, and he'll help explain to you what happens at the time. I've done it many times and we always get on very easily. The train is a beautiful, they're usually new lovely trains, and you have restrooms on each carriage. You have like a little cafeteria, you can buy coffees or sandwiches, but sometimes I recommend to bring some lunch with you on the train. You can buy in King's Cross station, so on arrival you have had something to eat and you have a nice journey up to Scotland. On arrival you meet your Scottish bus driver, and then you will travel to your hotel, as well you will check in, and then that evening you have a welcome dinner or a dinner celebrating in Edinburgh. And then as well, your tour director can explain the sites and show you around the town and give you suggestions of things to do, like in the local Haymarket area, or go to the Royal Mile or Princes Street Gardens. There are many things to do in Edinburgh, and it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Then moving next, the next day you have a sightseeing tour of Edinburgh City, where you walk up to Edinburgh Castle. It's very old. Edinburgh. It's over 1,000 years old, so very old cobblestone streets, and it is walking very steeply up to the castle. So like I was talking with Nielsen about, if you need assistance or anything, please ask your tour director about this kind of walking and how you're going to manage that on tour if you need assistance, but please communicate that with your tour director.
Afterwards, Kurt, I would also say if you just wanted to chime in, if you do have concerns about walking or the amount of walking on the tour, you can always give us a call ahead of time too, because we do have folks on staff that can go through day by day with you and talk about, you know, some challenging moments or you know, just more detail than what we have on our website about the amount of walking. So I just wanted to throw that out there as something that you may want to do if that is something that you have concerns about.
Yeah, and it's definitely a tour you're doing, so you will have to walk a certain amount, you know, 1 to 2 hours per day up certain areas and stuff to get to see these sites, because they're only accessible by foot, so you'll have to do that. But it is amazing, and it's definitely worth making the extra effort going to see these places. In the afternoon you get to go, there's an optional of Abbotsford House and Melrose Abbey, and Abbotsford House is the house of Sir Walter Scott, the famous writer, and you get to have a lovely afternoon tea on arrival in Abbotsford House, and then you get to explore the house itself and get to visit all the rooms, and you could do that with one of the volunteers from Abbotsford House. It's a volunteer organisation, and it is a very, very special place. Afterwards you get to go to Melrose Abbey, which is where Sir Walter Scott was inspired to write some of his novels, and as well, Robert the Bruce's heart is buried there. So any Braveheart fans or anybody into that historic Scotland stuff would absolutely love to do this optional. Is that cool? And where are we going next? Are we going? Hold on, we're going from Edinburgh. So that there is the next day in Edinburgh is. We go to Liverpool. Sorry, yeah, I'm just trying to get back on track. So what you do that day, you go to Liverpool, Usually it's an early start of that day because it's a big drive from Scotland all the way down to Liverpool. You do have a lovely stop along the way for some lunch or a break and stuff like that. But so it's a big day. And as well, on arrival at Liverpool, the people doing the Beatles optional, you get to learn so much about the Beatles. There's a lovely experience called the Beatles Story, and you will get to go to Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields and get to see and learn the history of the Fab Four. As well, sometimes I like to take my group that like a bit of rock and roll to the actual Cavern Club on Matthew Street, where the Beatles actually played. So if you're up for a little bit of something lively, a lovely evening in Liverpool City, have a lovely dinner and actually go and experience what it was like to be in this old club in the 60s in the Cavern. It's fantastic. And I would really highly recommend the Beatles tour. It's a really fantastic experience. I think that evening as well, you have free time in Liverpool. And then afterwards, we go the next morning to Dublin on a ferry. It's more like a cruise ship. It has lots of shops, duty-free, restaurants, bars, and it has a very, very nice areas to sit and just enjoy your trip to Dublin. On arrival in Dublin, you will check into your hotel, and then you will have free time. Sometimes you have as well an eve like a pub dinner, an Irish show. That happens as well sometimes on arrival. But if not, your tour director can take you to areas like Temple Bar, which is in the picture I can see on the right-hand side, is where all the people go and have a lovely pint of the Guinness. As well in Dublin, you can get to go to Trinity College, the Book of Kells, the Guinness factory, the Guinness storehouse, and get to experience the life of a Dubliner. But Dublin is a great place to go and experience just the Irish life. It's a really lively place, and the people are where the magic is in Ireland. On the next day, you have your sightseeing tour of Dublin, and you get to see that with a local guide. And you actually get to go inside St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is one of the most beautiful cathedrals in the world. And as well, you get to go to Phoenix Park, the River Liffey, and get to really learn about Irish history on your guided sightseeing tour of Dublin. I did mention before the traditional Irish dinner and show. Yeah, sometimes I've done it on the first evening or the second evening. So you will get to go to a local venue or pub where they have a fantastic Irish show, and you actually have a very big dinner. Irish dinners are big, and you can have that with a lovely pint of Irish Guinness or the lovely soda bread as well. Okay, so after that we go to County Kerry via Blarney. So that maybe another early kind of start because it's a long down the road. On the way to Blarney, there's a beautiful place called Cashel, where the Rock of Cashel is, where you get to stop and go and experience the views from there. And as well, you travel on to Blarney, and it's famous for kissing the Blarney Stone. Many people still go and kiss it, and you climb up many, 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 many steps. And then you go to the top of the castle, you kiss the stone, and then you have the gift of the gab. Then afterwards, they have a lovely restaurant and cafe you can enjoy there. And as well, and afterwards, you continue to County Kerry to check into your hotel. But that's a full day of driving. So you leave about 8:30 in the morning, and you arrive 6:30 in the evening. It's a full day. But usually on arrival, then I think you have a dinner. Yes, you do. I think you have a dinner on arrival at the hotel. And then the next day, you have your Ring of Kerry with your tour director sightseeing tour. Basically, the Ring of Kerry is a peninsula on the west coast of Ireland, and you get to go and see lots of famous sites around there. There's things from Charlie Chaplin to Star Wars to the birthplace of the Irish coffee, and lots of historic things as well. The Daniel O'Connell, the Liberator, was born as well in Carshaveen. So it's a fantastic day, and it just is one of the most magical places in Ireland. So that's one of my favorite things on the whole of the tour. Then the next day, we travel up, I think early again. You'll be traveling early in the morning just to get the full day out of everything. So on the way up to the Cliffs of Moher, usually you'll have like a little coffee stop in the morning. An arrival at the Cliffs of Moher, which are just phenomenal. As you can see from the picture, you have to, it's something even a picture can't really show. It's something you have to experience, something with your own eyes, to be honest with you. As well, inside they have a beautiful visitor centre. So if you want to go and experience they've got a lovely exhibition about all the natural wildlife on the Cliffs of Moher. That's a fantastic thing. As well, they have a beautiful gift shop. You can get your Cliffs of Moher goodies, and a lovely coffee shop as well. So I mean, but your tour director can explain all this stuff to you. But the Cliffs of Moher are something spectacular, and are really a bucket list kind of thing to go and see once in a lifetime. And then afterwards, you will travel to Dublin. I'm sure on the way you'll stop and have a coffee, or maybe even a lovely little Guinness if you would like. And then you have your farewell dinner that evening,
Yes.
back in Dublin, and then you fly back the next morning. But that's your farewell dinner. So usually it's a really nice. It's full of tears and happiness, and so because everybody's really enjoyed the tour. So the farewell dinner is a really lovely end to the tour, and then you fly off the next morning. There you go. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurt. I really appreciate you taking us through that. As you were speaking, I did see a number of questions come in, and we are going to get into our section of helpful tips here in just a moment. But Kurt, I was hoping I could put a couple of questions to you, just so that we can address these before we get into the next section. So one of them is from Janine, and she asks, how will the Queen's death impact our trip, if at all? So I wouldn't expect that it would impact their trip. Am I correct in that?
No, because you guys are touring. When was it? In November or December? You said, Nilsson.
That's correct.
Yeah. So there's only some things happening in the next week or so, and even I'm doing a tour. It hasn't affected that. So at the moment, so I would say, as you guys, it's a way away. No, I would say it wouldn't affect your tour at all.
Great. All right. So I have a question here from Dawn. And she is asking, and this is related to the day where we have the guided sightseeing tour in London. Sorry, pardon me. She asks, would there be time that day to do a day trip to Oxford or the Cotswolds? I think that would be pretty tough in one afternoon. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, unless you did do your sightseeing tour, to be honest with you, if that was the tour is included. So if you didn't want to do that, and some people have wanted to do those things, you could, but it's a big day. It's maybe 5 hours driving, 6 hours driving, and then plus your time there. Yeah, so it's a lot.
Yeah.
At the daylight hours. Do you remember we would say the hours? Shall I mention that yet? Yeah.
Sure. Let's talk about it, because as we do get later in the year, the days will be shorter, right?
Yeah, so it get light about 8:30 in the morning, and it will be dark by 3:34. So this is, so remember that as well. So it makes for nice warm evenings by the fireplace, having a nice pint of Guinness in Dublin. But as well, I've done the tours in the winter, and it's still just as special. But bear that in mind, that there's limited hours in the day. Okay.
Yeah. I have another question from Janine, and she asks, when do Christmas markets typically pop up? Would they be around in November?
Mid-November.
Great. Okay, fine.
Mid-November.
All right. And then, so here's a question from Susan, and she says, I'm not a beer drinker. What's the next best drink? I don't know, maybe tea? What do you think?
Tea, yeah, of course. That's I'm only mentioning Guinness as I was talking about Dublin, but tea, we drink tea all the time. I might have 10 to 15 cups of tea a day. There you go. We drink tea all the time. We never stop drinking tea. And you have to put the tea bag in first, then you put the hot water on, and then you put your milk, yeah? Or if you're really posh, you put a slice of lemon.
I have one more question that I'm going to take before we get into our helpful tips. And this is about the timing of optional excursions. So Caridad asks, what time typically would we be returning from Windsor, and what time typically would we be returning from Abbotsford House?
Yeah, so when you do these optionals, what will happen is when you're doing the sightseeing tour in the morning, you will continue straight onto your optional. You will not, you just go all day, yeah? So you just keep on going. But with these optionals, because we know that you need it, is some lunch. So on the Abbotsford House, the first port of call, you will literally get a bus to Abbotsford House, and then you have your lunch first, yeah? then you have your tour. And then the same with Windsor as well. When you leave London as well, sorry, I go back a bit, but so you'll have lunch, you'll have some free time for lunch, and then you do your tour. But you continue that, and usually you get back, I would say 5 to 6 p.m.
Okay, great. All right. So with that, I do see that we're continuing to get questions in, and we will address them. But one of them, I think we're actually going to be covering in just a moment here. But Kurt, let's talk a little bit about weather. So we did talk about how as we get later in the year, the days will be getting shorter. But for November and December, let's talk a little bit about cooler temperatures and use that as an opportunity to talk about how people should pack. So what kind of weather should people expect in November and December?
I think it's going to be, it gets cold. So now October, it's like fall and winter. If it's November, December, it's winter. So I think you need, maybe it depends on what temperatures you're used to,
Right.
but definitely something for rainfall. Maybe like a proper jacket. You're going to need like a proper jacket. Maybe something that's what's it called? Like a material like so.
Gore-Tex or waterproof or something.
That's the word, yeah. So something that's weather that can protect you from the cold and wind. Maybe not something too heavy, because you like a hat, a woolly hat, some gloves, a scarf. That might be enough, because you might have a day it gets warm. So you've got things layers as well. Layers are good. So a nice sweater, hats and scarves, that kind of thing. Yeah.
We wouldn't expect it to get cold enough for snow probably in November and December, right?
In Edinburgh, yeah.
In Edinburgh, maybe? Okay.
Edinburgh, yeah. London, maybe not, but it could still be very cold and wet.
Yeah.
So, and Dublin as well. So
and when it's both cold and wet, that can really feel like it gets down into your bones. You know what I mean? Like when it's both cold and wet.
Exactly. So that's when you need your hot cup of tea, yeah?
All right. So let's talk a little bit about packing, because we did touch on this. So I have a couple of tips, and then Kurt, I might ask you for any additional input if you have it. So, but first thing I would say is pack lightly. Pack lightly. If you do bring a checked bag, I would say please do limit yourself to one checked bag per person. And if you do, I think that one of the ways that's really helpful to travel is if you have that and then like a backpack, because it means that you're only having to handle that one big piece of luggage. Especially when you're getting on the train or going through airports, it's just helpful to have less luggage with you. So if you are checking a bag, please limit yourself to one checked bag per person. As of now, I'm not aware of anywhere specifically that masks would be required on this tour, but I think it's a good idea to have them with you just in case, as well as hand sanitizer, always a good idea when you travel. And when you are packing your bag that you're going to carry on the plane, please put your medication, anything you need on a daily basis, and a few sets of clothes in that bag with you, just in case there is a delay with your checked luggage. Good walking shoes are important, as we were talking about in Edinburgh, and everywhere else, there can be uneven surfaces, cobblestones, things like that. And so you're going to be on your feet a lot. So good, comfortable walking shoes are important. As far as clothing, I would say think about your clothing in layers. So mixing and matching different pieces that you can put together. So you want to have your insulating layers, and then you want to have an exterior layer that's waterproof or water resistant, something to keep the water and wind off of you. And then you pack your nice warm insulating layers underneath that. And then I also think a reusable water bottle is helpful. Of course, you can buy bottled water if you wish, but the water everywhere we go on this tour is safe to drink, so you can refill a reusable water bottle if you wish. I'm going to talk in detail about electrical adapters, but Kurt, do you think I touched on everything here? Is there anything else that you think might be helpful for people?
No, I would say just to reiterate, pack, it is colder, so pack lightly, so pack sensibly, things that you could wear a sweater for a few days, or you know what I mean? Something that's wearable, durable, that you're comfortable in as well. That's important. But yeah, less is more. If you're don't only bring one big case, or one case, I should say. And like you said, a backpack is really handy, because you have to carry this around sometimes. So it makes it a lot easier or a nicer experience for you if you haven't got to carry around so much luggage. I'm anticipating a question that we might get, which is about laundry. If someone did want to do laundry on tour,
what, if any, options would they
Yeah,
have?
I mean, I would say most hotels do laundry for you, but it has an expense, hotel
Yeah.
laundry. So
Yeah. So,
it's quite. Shall I give you an example? How much?
well, I understand they usually charge per item of
Yeah, it's per
clothing, right?
item. So
Yeah.
maybe
So,
for a washing of shirt, $10. So you got 5 shirts, $50. That kind of thing. So or equivalent of in pounds. Yeah. So
right.
it has a reasonable cost.
Um, all right, so let's talk a little bit about electrical adapters because I do think this is important to touch on. So when you're in the UK and Ireland, they use this type of plug that we see on the screen here, the Type G plug. So if you're coming from North America, you will need to have an adapter. If you don't have one already, I would say look up universal adapters because then if you travel anywhere else, you'll be all set. But one thing that's important to remember is that the voltage in the UK and Ireland is stronger than the voltage that we have here in North America. So you should be careful and check the devices that you bring to make sure that they will operate up to, I believe it's 220 volts. And so usually things like cell phones are designed to be dual voltage where they can work here or they can work there on the stronger voltage. But if you look on the plug or on the device itself, it will usually say input, 120 to 220, something like that. And that would mean that that's an okay thing to bring and you don't need a voltage converter. Now, one class of device that I think causes the most problems is hair dryers and other hair care tools. All of the hotels that we go to should have hair dryers, so you can leave that at home. But because the electricity is stronger there, we've had so many cases where people have had their hair dryers get melted or fried out. And so please do leave your hair dryer at home. You can save some space in your luggage by doing that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about money. On this tour, you're going to be using the pound sterling in the UK, and then you're going to be using the euro when you're in the Republic of Ireland. So some general recommendations that I have. One of them is, first of all, you need to notify your bank before you travel. Make sure they know what your plans are. And then I would say that you can bring credit cards and you can make many, many purchases by using credit cards. Visa and MasterCard are the most widely accepted. And then for withdrawing cash, bring debit cards. Bring debit cards to withdraw cash from ATMs. That's what I do. And I think it's better to do that than to bring cash with the idea that you'll exchange it. Bringing cash to exchange, the number of places that have cash exchange bureaus is on the decline, partially because it's so easy to get cash from ATMs, but also in the places where it's easy to find, like airports, the fees are really high. And so you can do a lot better by simply bringing ATM cards and withdrawing cash. And it's good to have cash on hand. Kurt, we were talking a little bit about this before, but there could be locations where you would need to have cash for like smaller purchases and things like that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I said like sometimes uh, maybe the credit card machine's not working somewhere, or you go to a restaurant or for a tip, or even for a taxi. Have some local currency on yourself at all times. Then then you have that flexibility to pay. But most places as well, Nate, take that Apple Pay, Google Pay. Tapping. That is,
Hmm.
it's really starting more in the US now. But a lot of places will accept quite a lot. You can tap. You can tap all day. Um, but yeah, so basically, I would say just in case, have some local currency because you could be somewhere and they'd only take cash, and it does happen. So not masses, but have an amount of each local currency, and it's good for tipping as well. You need it for tipping.
Yes, yeah, that's an important thing to mention. So I'm going to talk a little bit about tipping here. So when you're on tour with us, you have folks that are going to be working very hard to give you this incredible tour experience. And we do recommend that you tip those folks. So your tour director, they are going to be with you every day of the tour. They're going to be with you throughout the whole thing. And so we do recommend that you tip them the equivalent of $7 to $10 US per person per day of the tour. And for bus drivers, so on this tour, I would expect that you would probably have a different bus driver in London, in Scotland, and in Ireland. And so we recommend that you tip those folks the equivalent of $3 US per person per day. And for local guides, we recommend the equivalent of $2 US per person per day. These tips, it's preferable to tip in the local currency and in cash. All right. So I have a few reminders before we get to our Q&A period. So I see we have a couple questions lined up. If you have more questions for us, please feel free to submit those, and we can get to them for you. So I do want to remind you, if you don't have the app yet, the Go Ahead Tours app, please do download it. It's really helpful for you as you're preparing for tour and when you're on tour as well. One thing that we ask folks to do in the app is fill out an evaluation of the tour. This information is really, really important to us. It helps us to make sure that we fix things that could be better and make sure we keep the things that you love. But also, if you get great service from your tour director, for example, we want to know about it. So make sure that you're letting us know by filling that evaluation out. You can do that during your tour and up to 5 days after you return home. I also want to remind you about our loyalty program. We call it Club Go, and Club Go is our program that rewards you the more you travel. So when you get home from this tour, you'll have access to an additional discount. We call it a welcome home credit. So if you want to set up another trip once you get home, please give us a call and we'll be happy to set that up for you. All right. So Kurt, I have some questions lined up for us here. Actually, this is one that I can take. This one's from Janine. And she says, how do we give these tips, directly or through the tour guide? So generally speaking, what's customary is that for your tour director, you usually give them to the tour director all at once at the end of tour. And so you'll give them to them there. Now, throughout the tour, when you have bus drivers or local guides, tour directors are very conscientious about letting you know when the last time you're going to see those people are, so that you know when to tip them. So typically what I've done on tour is, if you have a local guide and you're about to say goodbye to them, the tour director will say, all right, folks, we're going to be saying goodbye to them. I go up, I say thank you, and I just hand them the tip. And we do send you envelopes in the mail that you can use for that tipping. So that is what I would expect there. All right, so let's see here. Oh, this is a good question. This one's from Ronald. And Ronald says, I've heard leg coverings are required in some cathedrals. Will this apply to our trip? Now, a dress code like that, like covering your knees before you go into a church, I've heard of that in Italy. Is that something that people would run into here in the UK or Ireland?
Maybe if you're going to wear shorts, if somebody's wearing really short shorts, it's a church, so I would be respectfully dressed, even in the UK. You could kind of walk off the shoulder, but it's a religious building, so I would say, I could understand they might have heard that, but you want to, but definitely in Italy, but not in the UK, but still it's a church. So I would say, if you're going to go into these types of building, ask, can I take a picture? Ask, you can kind of suss up, that what's acceptable to wear in a church.
Great. So I have a question here from Colleen, and she is asking about paying for optional excursions. And she's asking, when do we pay for them? So there's a couple of different ways. There are some that do need to be booked before you leave. And for those, so you can either call us or you can add them through your app, and you would pay for those prior to departure. There are some excursions that can be added on tour. Kurt, can you talk a little bit about how that works if people do want to add excursions on tour?
Yeah, I think sometimes most things, sometimes you can be added, but just communicate with your tour director clearly and say, can I please book Windsor or Stonehenge or whatever was on the itinerary, but don't book anything till he can confirm that he has he can book you on, or she can book you on. But yeah, so just check in with your tour director, and then as soon as they confirm, yeah, you're fine to go on the optional, then you can pay via the app. With that, yeah, that's what I would say. But always, and never book anything without asking your tour director whilst on tour. Never. Because he might not be able to book it for you, and we don't want to disappoint you. So always check with your tour director, and they always do their very best if they can get you on that optional.
Yeah. So so for the ones that you have to pay it for ahead of time, that that is guaranteeing that you have a spot. Sometimes they can figure out a way to make it happen. So always chat with your tour director, communicate with them, let them know what you're thinking and feeling, and they'll be able to help assist you there. All right, Kurt, I have a question from Deborah, and she says, are my heavy duty walking shoes appropriate at dinners? Are there dress codes?
It depends. If you're comfortable, I would say most places in on this tour. The dinners are quite casual, so it's up to you. You know, some people like to dress up, some people don't. But I would say most on these tours, it's fairly casual. You know,
Yeah.
but sometimes you are going out for dinner with a group, so people do dress up. So it's nice maybe to make a little effort, and you know. But I wouldn't say you'd have to wear fancy shoes. You know, people
Yeah.
can wear your sneakers still.
Yeah, if that's what you're comfortable in, wear them. It's fine. All right. So I don't see any more questions in there for the moment. Kurt, I'm going to give it 1 or 2 more minutes to see if we do get any more questions in here. But one thing that I was curious about is, can you tell us about any kind of food that are sort of like traveler favorites, things that people always like to check out when they're traveling in the UK and Ireland?
Well, in the UK, definitely fish and chips. So it's very, so far as I've learned, it's very different from what you have in the US. So ask your tour director for recommending a place for fish and chips. Don't just walk into a pub for fish and chips, because it might not be the best place for fish and chips. So always ask your tour director to recommend fish and chips. Other things that are really big in the UK is pies and pasties. And they're more like meat pies, but it's still kind of different from what you have in the US. So I would ask your tour director to maybe show you a nice local bakery. In London specifically, there's an amazing place called Borough Market, which has one of the most amazing foods in all of the world, and you can try everything down there. Have fish and chips. In Scotland, you've got haggis. I really like haggis. I think it's a really yummy thing. But you have to work that out for yourselves if you want to try that. But I like haggis, it's nice. A haggis pie, you can't go wrong with a haggis pie. And in Ireland as well, you've got your bacon and cabbage, all that kind of stuff as well. And they have fish and chips in Ireland as well. So you could try fish and chips everywhere. But so other types of food like sausage rolls, Scotch eggs, what other desserts as well are really cool as well? Oh, afternoon tea. Afternoon tea is a really nice thing. That's a nice thing to do in London. And if you're there and you get there and you have an afternoon spare, you can have like your cucumber sandwiches and drink lots of lovely cups of tea and lots of cake. So afternoon tea is another really good one as well. But I mean, ask your tour director to be able to tell you as well, or share some nice things as well. Traveling from Liverpool from Edinburgh down to Liverpool, there's Kendal mint cake. Have you tried that, Nielsen?
I haven't tried it, no.
Delicious. It's like peppermint cream or something, like a block of pepper.
Okay.
It's really nice. I like it. It's lovely. But actually, English chocolate's really nice as well. It's very different from the type of chocolate you have in the US. So Cadbury's chocolate, but I think how we make it is a bit different. But now you have lots of local places and pubs and stuff like that. So do ask your tour director to ask some places to go and eat. And there's good food everywhere, guys. So you won't go hungry. There's really nice restaurants all around. Okay.
I did have a couple of questions come in here, Kurt. Thank you for giving us that food rundown. You've made me hungry. But this question is about what time the tour day normally starts. So I know that it can vary a little bit, but in general, what is a
I
typical
would say
time
between 8 and 9 a.m.
Great. Yeah. So not too early, and we're not getting you out the door at 4 a.m.
No. Between 8 and 9 a.m. Usually it depends. Like in London, it would be like 8:30. The tour will start. In Edinburgh, 8:30. It's kind of the set time. Sometimes it might be a little half an hour before, half an hour after, but approximately between 8 and 9 a.m. normally it starts.
Great. So I have a question here from Andrea, and I can answer this one. It says, will this video be emailed afterwards? I joined late and couldn't really keep up while working. So yes, yeah. So we are recording this, and we are going to be sending you an email tomorrow that will have the link so that you can go back and watch this again if you wish. All right. So Susan asks, what are typical breakfast foods? So like what kind of food might people expect at the included breakfast that we have at the hotels?
Oh, yum, yum, yum. We're talking about food again. So we have sausages, but you call them like link sausages, yeah? Bacon, but you might think it might be a bit more like ham. It's like a full English with tomatoes, you say, black pudding. Baked beans, we love baked beans for breakfast. Eggs, usually fried or scrambled. But the breakfast in the hotels is very good. And as well, they'll have like bread, croissants, yogurts, cereals, fresh fruit. So you'll have a choice between fruit, everything, and juices as well, and coffee. But English breakfast, it's different from what you have in the US, but it's a very hearty breakfast. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer that question?
You did, yes. All right. So Deborah was asking, she says, to reduce packing, are most sundries easily available? So like, are there things that people could just pick up along the way if they need them, instead of packing them?
Such as like, you mean like toiletries or more things
I
like
think
that?
that's what
Yeah.
she means. Yeah.
I would say everything. You're in big cities. You're in London, Edinburgh. You're in Dublin.
Dublin.
No, you can get everything there. So I mean, you could bring a few bits that you know that you really need to have with you, like your favorite, toothpaste or something. But if there's something, they sell all the brands, Colgate, everything that you have in the US is in the UK, including Starbucks and all that kind of shenanigans as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything
All
you
right.
have, everything you can get. Lovely.
Great. Well, Kurt, I really want to thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have any final thoughts or parting words for our travelers, as they get prepared to travel to England, Scotland, and Ireland?
Oh, just get excited about it all. I think it's going to be might be the adventure of a lifetime. You get to meet some amazing people um, on the tour, and maybe in these countries as well. Make some new friends and just enjoy a very special time. That's it, really. Just to enjoy it.
Great, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kurt. I really appreciate you being here with us, and for sharing your expertise.
You're very welcome.
And I want to thank all of you at home for joining us. I really do appreciate you being here with us to get prepared for this tour. And I want to thank you again just for traveling with us, and for choosing this tour. I can speak for my colleagues across the pond when I say we're very excited to be traveling again and to be sharing this incredible experience with you. So thank you again. And until we see you on tour, we will say happy travels and we will see you soon.
Okay, thank you.